A teachers' union is calling for young pupils to be taught about the dangers of hate speech from online influencers. It argues that children are accessing material on phones from a young age and so need to understand about the concept of misogyny and extremism. Critics say primary school children are just too young to talk about these ideas and that this kind of teaching is best left to parents rather than teachers who are already too busy. James, that change from primary school to secondary school is huge, isn't it? Suddenly you have, much older children in their late teens, plus a lot of parents would put a phone in the hand of people, of their kids as well, to make sure they're safe. Do they need to know before that, or do they need to know after?
Well, I think just to pick out this particular subject, when there are so many other things that I think people need to know and understand, is, in my view, not necessarily helpful, because I think if you start to do this and it starts to politicise an issue, that it can become too hotly debated and too hotly discussed when we've got a third of children understand and know what VE Day is and history of world wars and the impact that they're having today, and the rest of them don't. We've got children who can't speak properly, they can't communicate effectively, they can't, So should basic manners and being polite to each other be in there? Yeah, I think it should. I seem to remember being taught basic rules of engagement with, when I went to nursery school and other schools, about how you treated other people. Should it be specifically delineated as dealing with misogyny? No. Because I think that goes away general manners. And I think also there should be more responsibility on parents to make sure that they're not giving their children access to certain kinds of materials. I think that we need to be having this debate. Why do we have to clear up the mess from the fact that social and digital media companies are letting this stuff run rampant, and also that we're allowing children who are inappropriately aged to have access to this stuff with phones, when they shouldn't have them?
You might head off the problem with one child when they get to secondary school, but you are introducing the topic to a lot of kids that maybe don't need to know about it at that age.
Well, they do. We teach our children... the idea that they don't know about VE Day, and so why should they know about misogyny? It's just, I don't even understand what that train of thought could be. This is a serious problem.
If you like.
No, this is a serious problem, James. In schools, teach female teachers, and children as young as 8. I know the daughter of a friend who's a teacher in a London school, and a very young child grabbed her breasts in class, a boy.
What age is this we're talking about?
9.
Okay.
Okay? And, it was shocking.
It's
okay,
shocking,
she calls, and he used the terms that are proper. And there are several things here where we teach our children from a very young age. Well, you're right. Good manners. You don't talk to people like this. But what's happening now is this, the influence of these really awful men online is terrible.
We have to pick it up after the break. Loads to talk about there, and don't go anywhere. We'll be taking your calls on this. Should primary children be taught about misogyny? Take a break. I'm sorry about that, Yasmin. But I wanted to come back to you and just look at that idea that you were saying. I just wonder whether we should be focusing with kids of that age on good relationships generally, whether we have to bring in...
No, it's not part of it. It's not, of course it's done holistically, it's done really well, and in a way it's tied to something that was brought in a long time ago on citizenship, education, how you behave. So it's not all about, don't bash up your sister or anything. It's actually really important to get them to understand. And remember this, and I'm not maligning any particular group, but many, many kids in many, many families actually come from families where misogyny is the norm. I remember doing some training with some people of Muslim background, and I remember saying to the mothers, when you finished eating, does your son clear up? No. So I said, only the daughter clears up. Yes. Why? And getting them to think is quite... So I think this is a very important thing.
Do you not think, though, we always worked on the basis with our kids that when they're ready to ask, they're ready to know. So they ask a question, they receive an honest and truthful answer. Why preempt that and introduce topics to kids that maybe are years away from ever taking an interest in effectively sexual politics. Is
No,
what we're talking about.
what James said earlier is important. The society we live in, what social media is doing, this is a really important problem that is developed before our very eyes, and all of us feel helpless.
But aren't you identifying the real cause of the problem here, which is it's all very well teaching in schools, but how do you deal with a child who says, hang on a second, what you're telling me is different from what I'm being told at home? So if there are problems with particular children, and when it comes to general training about sort of politeness or otherwise, then actually it's something that you've got to deal with parents, because you might be talking about
because
different
some parents share some of those attitudes, and actually there's groupthink that goes on. There may be a couple of kids who are not like that, but they get into a group where the strongest among them shares these ideas about girls and women. And, you know, the report by the teaching unions is really important to look at, that the behaviour is showing in the class. And parents don't support the teachers.
I wonder whether, James, there is that sweet spot, maybe in year 6, that last year of primary school, before they're let out into the world generally, where actually you have a chance. They are still listening to teachers. They are still listening to their elders. And you can get to them and you can say, this might be an issue. I just need you to be aware.
Well, it might be, but I think that there are bigger issues here that I just don't think we're necessarily dealing with. That, you know, the elephant in the room is social and digital media. I know that we've got this online safety bill. I'm not sure it goes far enough. I'm not sure necessarily that it's applying the right metrics to the organisations where it's there. But then also people are going to see stuff. And I think one of the problems is that if you teach a certain kind of thing and say, well, you're highlighting to most of the children who may or may not know that it's there, and basically saying, go and look. And then there's like, you know, if you're not careful, it actually ends up doing the wrong thing.
No,
So,
well,
you might not agree, but I think that the issue here, I think, is about, well, what should we do and how politically motivated are we going to get with all of this? Because I think there are so many things that we're not...
It's not to do with politics, James.
Well, I
it's
think
to
it
do with
is.
society. It's what kind of society do we, you and I, and everybody else
Correct.
want to live
So
in?
therefore,
it's
it
not
is-
politics.
it is politics.
It's society.
It's actually politics and it's...
No,
it's-
it
I
is
just wonder-
society.
I
It's
wonder
also
whether
religion.
teachers, particularly primary school teachers, you think about a teacher that has to cover all of the subjects. Typically, that's how it works in primary schools. One teacher dealing with all that. Then you add another burden on top, and you're saying to that
Teachers
teacher...
want it. Are we going to listen to them? Teachers are asking for this.
Well, this is the NASUWT,
Yeah.
the teachers' union.
Well, the
is
teachers'
saying
union is
it needs
asking
to
for
be
it.
dealt with.
But
And it's happening in schools. I mean,
But I
how can
agree
we
it
not
needs to be dealt with,
want to do this? I don't understand why you
But
wouldn't
do
want...
you genuinely think that this kind of teaching would solve the problem? Because my issue is, I don't think it does. I don't think that unless you bring parents into this, it's going to be dealt with. And I don't think unless you bring into the social and digital media companies.
I wonder if you take knife
Look,
crime as an example.
let me
There has
tell
been
you.
plenty of initiatives in schools to bring the dangers of knife crime
And it hasn't-
to
it
the
hasn't
to the
worked.
awareness of kids. Kids are aware of it already, and it hasn't really worked.
No, we can't make a generalised comment like that. In certain areas, in certain schools, there has been immense progress because there's been a very concerted effort to understand the background of the child. We can't just say it hasn't worked. Some of these
Well, I think the
ideas...
evidence tells you that it hasn't.
Some of these ideas are just part of how to live in the world in a decent way.
Let's take some calls. Anne's in Nottinghamshire. Do you think primary school is the right time to start teaching kids about the dangers of misogyny, Anne?
I am a former teacher, and I have to say that I think that the gentleman has got it right here. We do teach children basic formalities of dealing with people, but I think that the wider access to the internet is a problem for me because they get to see so many things on the net, and you see people with their iPads just wheeling kids about in the park, and they're looking at their iPads, and the parents haven't got a clue what they're looking at.
Okay.
And they've got smartphones too, and I just think ban the under-16s from accessing the net like they do in Australia.
We've discussed that before, whether social media is something that should be pushed back to 16. I'm just wondering, Anne, as a teacher, If you have a classroom of kids there and you wanted to talk to them about the dangers of misogyny, would you have the first idea where to start?
Well, I was an English teacher, and I used to talk about pejorative language,
Okay.
and that's sexist and racist. And so I would talk about some aspects of misogyny and looking at language. So, yes. But I think people think that teachers should be doing everything. And we just don't have the time. We really don't. I taught GCSE and A-level, and it was really difficult for me to get all the work into the curriculum that I needed to.
Okay.
So we haven't got a lot of spare time to do X, Y, and Z.
Is there a way to do it through your own subject then? So you could look at the kids and say, look, here's a text. What do you see here about the way this man is treating this woman? Is that the way you do it, through your, expertise?
We'd look at things like the word woman, which means part of a man in Latin. And we talk about words like chairman as opposed to chairperson, and we'd look at racist comments. I mean, I had a friend who used to use the phrase "as lazy as a black," and I actually said to him, "Can you not use that phrase, please, because it's quite racist?" Yeah. But he was a very old man, and he'd used it for a long time, and
And can I ask, you were a secondary school teacher, were you?
I was, yes.
OK. Do you think that was the right time to talk about those things? Would you have been able to do it with kids of 9 or 10 years old?
I wouldn't explicitly do it with that age group. I would, we'd talk about, and maybe we'd talk about, like, the first female doctor in this country, and about Jesse Owens and the Olympics with Hitler. Yeah. I wouldn't specifically talk about misogyny or racism in that way. I was on a bus once with children who were Asian, and this car pulled up at the side of them, and so they shouted the P word at these children. Yeah. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Listen,
and
we're going to have to leave it there. I'm so sorry, but you sound like a brilliant teacher. You sound like you're bringing what you have and teaching kids about exactly what we've been talking about, misogyny, racism, in your own way.